So this interview is with Dr. Amy Kustra Barksdale. I asked Dr. Amy if she would be willing to share her story because she was an amazing physician. I saw her back in 2008 and was just so struck by just what wonderful like bedside manner, if you will, she had. Like it was clearly she really cared about her patients as well as was a great physician. And then I discovered a while back that she had left medicine and was focusing full time on her art. And since so many of my clients are engaged in exploring a new career and oftentimes feel scared about taking that big step, as well as working with people who are thinking about going into medicine. I asked Dr. Amy if she'd be willing to do an interview. And as you'll see, it was just a wonderful, deep, thoughtful interview. There might be a few places where the video is a little sketchy because the Wi-Fi wasn't always particularly great, but I wanted to keep the video versus just have audio recording because you get to experience more of Amy's essence as a human being. So enough of the intro and let's get into the interview. All right. So first off, thanks again for being willing to do the interview.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm
Yeah,
happy to.
I'm so looking forward to this. So if we could start off with when you decided you wanted to be a physician, and then we can go from there.
Oh, sure. Um, Actually, I had wanted to be a physician, I think, from a young age. I had I had actually met Mother Teresa when I was probably like maybe 13 or 14. And it was her last year of life, and she was staying in a convent in the Bronx. And so I was able to go to a chapel and actually meet her and hold her hand. And I think that that had a really big impact on me because at the same time I was really interested in Gandhi and interested in basically people who were these icons who were making a difference in the world. And so at the time when I met her, I was thinking, I was actually an artist at the time too. I was very into art, and it was my one of the things that kept me really engaged. Um, and and but then when I went through high school and had to start thinking about, unfortunately, early on, you have to think about whether you're going to do pre-med or not. And so I had to decide right away to do pre-med when I got into my freshman year of college. And so I already knew I had to make that decision that I wanted to pursue medicine. Um, but the other big factor influencing me at that time was that I was a waitress. And so I waitressed all through high school, and I even waitressed through college. And so I was a student who worked in order to support my education. And and I love waitressing. I love getting to know people. I love seeing my regulars. And I just thought, wow, this is what I want to do. I want to chat with people, get to know them. And I saw being a doctor as partly being like a waitress where you can really just enjoy people. And so between the waitressing and Mother Teresa and just knowing that I thought I would definitely enjoy it. That's how I decided.
Wow. So two things I'd love to follow up on. So one is, can you tell the story of meeting Mother Teresa and what that was like sort of like paint that picture. And then after that, I'd love to hear more about how did the Mother Teresa experience influence you to become like do medicine as a form of helping versus like other ways of helping. So can you like create that image of like, what was it like meeting her, holding her hand, etc.?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
So from what I remember, I was with my mother. My mother is actually a very spiritual person, and we had gone to a tiny little convent in the Bronx. And inside the convent, there was a dark, very small chapel, and it was beautiful, quiet, and stained glass, kind of dim lights, and there was a small service. And then afterwards, everyone in the chapel, probably a dozen or so people, were able to approach Mother Teresa, and we each had time with her. And so basically, when I met her, she held my hand and she kind of gave me this warm squeeze, and she gave me a little medal of Mary. They're the common medals that people wear. And so she gave me one, and I still have it, and I used to wear it for years. And I just remember feeling this embrace of love and of just this depth of compassion and this depth of just being really present with her. It was very short, but it was a moment that I still can remember and feel, because it made a real big impact on me. And I held that. I held the feeling, I think, maybe even more than the memory. It was like the feeling of warmth, love, and complete acceptance and support. And so that was, I think, one of my more memorable experiences in my life. And also it inspired me to see myself like her as an instrument of something greater. And so going into medicine, I always knew in some way or the other, it was the right thing for me, because I saw myself as an instrument, and I saw myself as a conduit of healing going through me and being able to provide that for others. And for me, medicine was the tool in order to do that. And so for some people, it's writing. Some people, it's beautiful architecture. Some people, it's continuing to be in the restaurant business. But I saw it, she helped me to understand that it wasn't all about me. And this job was something greater than a job, and a way of making a living, which at the time was very important for me as well. Oh my gosh, David. Oh, this is horrible. I've got the dog barking. I've got the phone ringing. This is so funny. David, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get Rosie in her crate. I'm going to put this phone on. I'm going to turn this phone off.
And
All
what kind of dog is Rosie? I couldn't really see.
Rosie is a cockapoo.
Okay.
She's so cute. Like, she's like obsessed with the squirrels at the feeder.
I love it. I love it.
So, but yeah, so I put her in her crate, so hopefully she'll quiet down. Can you hear her right now? She's
Just a little, but that's it'll add to the amusement factor. I'll leave a little of the barking in because it's so funny.
It gives it atmosphere.
Yeah, exactly. So where we left off, you were like, it's not about you, about being a conduit.
Yeah, so she helped me understand how people like Gandhi, like all my inspirations, Gandhi and Martin Luther and Malcolm X and Dalai Lama, like how these people are able to do what they do. And it helped. I think one of the things I learned when I met her was that the good and bad of the world doesn't actually depend on us. We're basically instruments of something much greater, something much bigger. And certainly we can affect change. But when I think of someone healing, when I think of someone getting better, there are infinite factors in addition to medicine and in addition to what we can offer as a primary care doctor. And certainly we can make an effect. but I think that there's a lot of other factors that I believe that come into play as to why someone that affects their trajectory of their life and their healing journey. And so as a doctor, I always, and it actually pragmatically, it helped me deal with the stress of being a doctor. It helped me to take off this pressure that, oh, it's up to me. It's up to me for things to be on time, or for people to take their medicines, or for me to know what to say at the right time and the right information. And it helped me in a very simple way to be like, you're doing the best you can. And you're part of the solution, but not the definitive. So
I love it. Yeah.
And I think of that in life in general, not just I think of that in life, how I'm situated in life. There's something way bigger at play here. So I always try to keep that perspective, and it just helps me, and it helps me make sense of this world.
I love, yeah, what a great philosophy in general. And it makes me think of that. I love that quote. Life is a mystery to be lived, not a problem to be solved.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah. And for me, I felt that I always saw medicine as being a calling, and a ministry, and a practice, more than a job. And so I went into it with blind faith that things will work out financially, things will work out with me even getting into medical school, which was against all odds. Like, if I'm meant to be there, I'll be there. If I'm not meant to be there, I'll find another path. And so I went into it just saying, this is what I want. God willing, if it's right for me, I'll find my way. And even through this transition into the next phase of my life, I think that that helped me, this way of seeing myself in the world. It helped me to transition, knowing that there was something bigger that was pushing me along.
Yeah. So can't wait to hear about the transition. Before we get to that, can you talk about, so how many years did you practice medicine, and what did you love most about it, and what was not a good fit for you?
Oh, great. Well, I started my medical journey in 1995 when I went to medical school. And so I went to medical school, I went to residency, and then I graduated from residency in 2002. And right away I started practicing, and I practiced until 2015. And at 2015, that's when I transitioned out of clinical medicine. But I've continued because I still greatly believe in I greatly believe in the public health aspect of medicine. And the last health center that I was at was a federally qualified health center called Greater Portland Health. So I decided to stay involved by serving on the board. And so since 2015, I've been on the board. So I've been on the board for about 7 years. And then basically I bring a clinical perspective to the board, and I work on the governance committee. So I'm still involved, but practicing ended in 2015.
All right. And so what did you, when you were practicing, this is sort of like a multi-part question. So like, what did you love about it? What didn't work for you? And what surprised you? Like, you didn't think medicine would be like this. So kind of a combo.
Yeah. Well, what really worked with me basically was the people. Hands down, the most gratifying thing was meeting every single patient and getting to know their stories, and having the very humbling honor of getting to know them and them entrusting to me their health, their story, their vulnerabilities. And so hands down, the most important thing and the most gratifying thing was the relationship. And I think in addition to that, the other thing, I'm someone who always likes to learn and someone who actually loves to read and is highly academic. And so I love the learning of it. Medicine is super engaging. It's always changing. It's always morphing. It's so fun to figure out a really complicated diagnosis. And so for me, that was a challenge and one that I really enjoyed and embraced. And sometimes it would take years to figure out what was going on with somebody. So the academic complex side of it, I did enjoy. I think the part of me that was the curveball, that was the most challenging part was that when I always imagine like sitting with someone and holding their hand and having the time to be available with them in a very present, compassionate way. And as I continued in my career, I was constantly stymied because it was actually, I had those moments, but as my career went on, it seemed like more and more of my time was being taken by paperwork, by phone calls, by filling out forms, by all the administrative side of medicine. And it came to a point where actually I started to be doing more of the clerical work and charting than seeing patients. And that's when I actually started to feel sad and bad because I didn't realize it was going to be that big of a piece of the practice. And as a primary care physician, I think for the most part, it's always going to be a big piece. And I think depending on where you are working, there's going to be initiatives to try to offload physicians the administrative piece so that they can actually see patients. But for me, it was just this ongoing issue that really tired me out and drained me and made me feel somewhat hollow. So that was the curveball. And I think that there was a third part to your question, which was the surprise.
Yeah, well, actually the surprise. So that was a curveball. Like you didn't expect
that was the
that.
surprise.
Yeah. Now, what about, it's interesting. You said that you still had at least moments of being able to spend time with patients and really be present. Was that, I say this, sort of my perception, both like going to like traditional doctors in a traditional setting versus like self-pay, and they don't deal with insurance companies, is like the self-pay don't deal with insurance companies. There is more of that spaciousness for actually having a relationship. In the settings that you were in, so it wasn't like 8 minutes or 7 minutes and then they're out the door kind of thing. You didn't feel that time crunch all the time? Is that, or
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I think that there was a time in my practice when I was in a private self-pay setting. And so the visits were much longer. And the actual first visit with the patient was an hour and a half. And I felt that gave me an amazing amount of grounding in who this person was. And it helped focus the treatment plan. And then subsequent visits were anywhere from 15 minutes to an hour. And so I think in that setting, there was absolutely a lot more spaciousness. And I was able to connect with folks more. And in fact, there was a lot less paperwork too. And then what I did was I went into a community health center setting. And in that setting, that's where I got hit by the 15 minutes or 20 minutes per patient who had multiple health issues, and you were working through a translator, or they were homeless. And so it was just a myriad of issues, and working on a clock where you're seeing someone every 20 minutes, sometimes double booked, sometimes someone coming in 15 minutes late and still seeing them. It was really unsettling, and something that you can, I think, do effectively if it's just every so often. But I think by the nature of primary care in certain settings, that's just the way it is. And so I think that's one of the things that led to the stress level for me being high, and led to the work itself being difficult to manage in a healthy way long term.
Yeah, I could, kind of projecting myself into that. I would imagine like it would end up feeling more like a grind than the magic of connecting with people, because there's like a never ending onslaught.
Yeah, it was hard. And granted, the health center was a new health center, and so there were so we were growing quickly, and everything was transforming quickly. And so there was lots of layers to contribute to why it was so challenging in that regard. But I think actually I think that healthcare, in fact, I don't think that that's uncommon. I think it's pretty common. And it's just really hard to fit people into a time slot. And I think that the patient feels it, the healthcare provider feels it, and the more we try to mechanize medicine, the further we get away from having a human interaction. And what I was experiencing is the mechanization of medicine, and I was feeling like I was a big cog in it, and it just didn't feel right.
Yeah. And so do you remember, was it like a moment where it was a tipping point for you? It's like, this no longer works for me, I'm going on to my next chapter. Was it a moment that you remember, or not?
It was more a process. I would say it was probably over a couple of years that I eventually got to the decision to leave medicine. But initially, the first year, I lightened my schedule, and I think that I was hoping that that would make the difference by pulling back on my hours. And then it didn't feel like I still didn't feel like I had that right balance that I was looking for. So then the second year I went into administration, and I became the medical director of the health center. And so I still practiced medicine, but I felt, maybe if I do administration, maybe if I work harder on finding some solutions to the issues in the health center. And still, it didn't seem like it was the right fit for me. And concurrently, what had started happening is that I started to actually develop a lot of health issues. And so first, there was a first big health issue, and I was like, oh, okay, I can manage this. Then something else came on. And then I started to develop like a pain in my shoulder, and then back pain. And so and then there was a confluence of medical problems I had. And that's when I was like, oh, my body is actually really speaking to me. This is just not working. And my body was what was speaking louder. And then my mind had to catch up a little bit and saying, aha, I'm already seeing that this balance is not working for me. And so I think that once that voice of my body spoke up, actually, that's when I knew that it was urgent. And because as a healer, you're always teaching people, or not teaching them, you're trying to be in conversation with, help them to recognize and listen to their body signals, to their intuition, and to their connecting with their inner selves in like the mindfulness sort of way. And I was like, oh, that's what's happening to me. And so once my body started to speak up really loud, I knew it was serious, and I knew it was important for me to listen. And so from that point, it was actually very quick. And I started, that's when I realized, oh, I actually need to make a big change, not a little change. I need to make a big change. And concurrently, I had 2 young children, and a big something I recognized at the time was I wasn't proud of how I was parenting, and I wasn't parenting in the way that I knew I could or had always wanted to. And so that too was a message to me, was, oh, this isn't working. You've tried for several years. It's not working. And that's when it was, I wouldn't say it was easy, but that's when I made up my mind. And then you had a question about, you had a couple more questions that I think are linked to this. So I'll stop there.
Oh, no, this is great. So it was a gradual process. And then when you got to the point of, all right, I need to make a big change, can you describe what that moment was and what made you decide to recommit and refocus on your art?
Yeah. Well, the moment was I was swimming at a beach. And I had said to my partner, hey, I'm thinking about quitting medicine. And he's like, yeah, you should. I was like, are you serious? I was like, are you serious? Really? You're okay with that? He's like, yeah, you should. I think I totally agree. And so I was like, okay. So I jumped into a wave. I got out of the wave, and in that wave, I made my decision. And then I went in 3 days later on Monday, and I told the then medical director that I was gonna, finish my 2 or 3 months and then quit practicing clinical medicine. But during that time, it was very interesting though, because even though that decision was quick and I had resolve and I did it, leading up to that time, there was a couple of things I was thinking about. And one of the things is that I was feeling very conflicted because I had spent so much time, energy, and resources in order to get this education and this training in order to be a physician. And so I grappled a lot with, wow, this seems like a big waste. But then maybe it was in the wave, but something switched. And all of a sudden I saw this as a gift, and a gift that I actually had to take advantage of, the chance to open up new doors, new windows, the chance to actually shed something, the chance to let something go, and to shed like a certain way of being and existing in this world, a certain way of walking through this world and having a certain kind of schedule. And so all of a sudden I saw it as a big opportunity and an opening, almost like a chance to see the world through different eyes. And also it was really pressing. I was really, really excited to have a less stressful life. Because I think going into the medical world, you enter a contract where whether you're working or not, you're always working. You're dreaming about your patients. You're reading about them. You're learning. You're doing constant medical education. It's actually a whole lifestyle that you're taking on. It's not a job. It's who you are. At least it was for me. And in deciding to do something new, I was opening up this whole opportunity to to experience life in a different way. And it was really, in a way, cataclysmic. I mean, it was not small, it was big, but at the same time, and the bigness was what I was giving up, but also even bigger was what was next. And I saw that, and that helped me to have the resolve. But being someone who's somewhat cautious, I did keep my medical license. I still have my medical license. If I want to go back to practicing, I can. But I chose not to give it up. I kept it active for a few years. Now it's inactive, but I still can practice medicine. I don't think I ever will, in fact, do clinical work, but I do still have my license.
I'm curious. So at least what I'm hearing is like there was the clear identity and sort of like all-consumingness, if that's a word, of being a physician. And then
Right.
there was the excitement, like this next thing I'm stepping into is even bigger than that, the identity I had before. I'm curious, even though there was that excitement of the bigger thing you're moving toward, did you go through like a sense of like being bereft or untethered, letting go of like, I'm a physician, that's my identity, and now who am I? Or was that not an issue?
Yeah, I think that the issue was, oh, I'm a physician. I'm doing something that's clearly helping others and making the world a better place. And that for who I am and how I grew up, that meant a lot to me, to have something that I was kind of giving back. And so, the big transition for me was, whoa, like, where does that go? Like, how does art, like, how can I, like, it felt a little bit like a little bit of guilt, a little bit like, how am I going to make an impact on the world? And part of me was like, you know what? It's okay. Cut yourself some slack and maybe even rethink how I had to even, in working through that, I had to even be like, you know what? Sometimes we have these long life-serving beliefs and convictions, and maybe we need to give them some room to change or morph or grow. And even with saying that, though, I did loosen up on that. But at the same time, I found that art actually, which I'm doing now, and I'm a painter, it has a great impact on people. And it has an impact. I feel like even though I do a lot of art on my own, art is a community, it's a conversation with others. It's something that I put my heart into. It's like an extension of who I am and what I'm all about, and the fact that I can share that with the world. And sometimes sometimes influence things socially, or there being something directly working towards justice or environmental sustainability. Like, there's definitely ways you can apply art to, like, in the same way that medicine's making the world a better place, so is art. But it took me a while to get there. It took me a while to realize how it would do so. And I think, it was a little weird not being called doctor. And that just kind of falling by the wayside. Many people now don't know I'm a doctor. It's very strange when you're a doctor for 20 years and basically everyone knows that you're a doctor. And so you do have, it's like a very interesting like level of like anonymity in a way. But in that spaciousness of that initial anonymity, it allows you to maybe be more of your authentic self, maybe more of your 8-year-old self, maybe have less fear or trepidation about doing or saying something. I felt like it allowed me to kind of maybe step into like a new facet of who Amy is or what my life is about. So it was freeing. It was freeing at the same time. And now it doesn't even occur to me to introduce myself as a doctor. So.
Oh man, some really interesting stuff here. And thank you for sharing at the depth that you're sharing. It's just makes this so much more interesting and helpful, and I know helpful to people. Oh, I wish I hadn't said that, because now I'm like, okay, what was I going to ask? Oh, okay. When you were talking about like shifting from like a clear vehicle of helping people and helping the world to something that maybe isn't quite as obvious, it makes me think of that quote. Hopefully I'll get it close to right. And I'd love to hear how you experience this. It's that quote, the last name of the guy is Fuller. It's that one where it says something like, stop asking what the world needs, but ask what brings you alive, because the world needs more people who are alive, something like that. And
that's right.
Yeah. And so one of the things that is really fascinating, both for myself as well as people who are like full-time artists, is that balance and service oriented, that balancing act of like, oh, so like for me, I love storytelling and am doing more of that. But, sometimes there's part of me like, oh, that's self-indulgent, that's like an artistic expression, that's for you, even though the stories I share are meant to be like healing stories, growing stories, etc. And so I'm curious how your version of wrestling, like, oh, I'm just expressing my creative urges and I'm loving my art, but like, I'm not, helping people get, better, how did you, can you share that? Cause I think that's super fascinating and could be really helpful.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a twofold parallel path. I think you hit on one of the paths, which is if you find your passion, you find your voice. And through your voice, people will see, they will feel that it's okay. Okay, so find your passion, find your voice, and then the voice will then lead to the work and the impact you're supposed to have on this world. And I think Joseph Campbell said something very similar too. And it was a quote that I had on my desk probably for 20 years. And I can't even tell you it right now, but I think that the path, I think that we're all meant to develop and to grow. And only we know what we're meant to become and what direction we're meant to go in. And that path is, we're constantly making choices on which way to go on that path. And it's very organic. And sometimes it's cognitive and we choose it. Sometimes we get pushed down the path. But I think that one of the things I realized is that my biggest gift for the world is that I could grow into my most authentic self. And to me, I think our authentic selves are those that are happy, those that feel content, they feel like they have purpose, and those that are speaking your truth. And so for me, that helped me to make the decision, because actually, in fact, art was my first love. Art was what I actually had wanted to do when I was 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And so it feels very cool that I can kind of come back to an original joy that I had. And so the other side of the parallel path is that it's this conviction and it's it's somewhat like a moral duty. I want to make the world a better place by my being here. And so I think that that's constantly coming in and out of my art. And I didn't know how I was going to do that with art. But the cool thing is that art and life, it manifests itself and the answers come. For instance, this is a small example, but I painted a painting and it was for Ukraine. And it's a prayer for Ukraine in the colors of the Ukrainian flag. And, that just appeared. And, I donate a portion of all my sales to environmental causes. And so that was another kind of neat, palpable way. But, outside of these concrete ways, how I know I'm making a difference is because people they're happy. I think that in general, my work, people get something out of it, whether it's, I don't know, but I just know, I'm not exactly sure, but a lot of people, they just enjoy looking at it. And I know in my life, art has always been something incredibly moving to me, more so oftentimes than books or music. And it's the art, but it's also the lives of the artists. I draw so much inspiration about reading about certain artists and the trajectory they've taken. And as a young kid, I actually spent a summer in Europe, and I probably collected 200 postcards from all the museums I went to. And in each postcard, I would go home or go to the library and read about all the artists. And for me, it helped me to create an understanding of the world through art. And so it's interesting because you'd think it would be pretty obvious that it's okay to do art. It's okay. You should. But it took me a long time. It actually was a struggle to get there. But all the lights along my whole life were actually leading me there. And sometimes we have such a focus that we don't see that. But if I really reflect and look back, I think that it was something that was always there for me. It was just a matter of when I was going to be able to do that. But I don't know. I think a big part of it is just letting go. I had to just let go a lot and just have faith that whatever was supposed to come would come, and it did. And art, I found ways to make art. I found ways to understand how my art makes a difference in the world. And I think that's for any job. I think that no matter what you do, it's not actually what you do oftentimes, it's how you do it. It's the intention. And it's the intention, and it's just what you hold within yourselves in the service that you're offering, whether it's being someone who's coming to fix your drain in the sink, or whether it's someone who's working at the store and being a salesperson. Everyone is contributing to greater good. And so going through this actually helped me see that even more, because you can think something and you can believe something, but it doesn't become real until you actually do it. And so.
Yeah. Now that you've been, doing your art full time, how would you say either you're different or your experience of being on Earth is different?
Well, part of what I did the year before I left medicine, and I was starting to develop health problems, is I took a very intensive meditation course, actually. And I actually started meditating from that course on every day, even if it's for 5 minutes or 20 minutes. I took up a meditation practice, and I think that it's helped me along with the art and along with the gift of having a more flexible schedule to be able to walk through my day in a way that's more responsive to to myself, for instance, when I'm hungry, I can eat lunch. And in the past, that wasn't the case. When I need to take a 5-minute break, I can take a 5-minute break. And so I think that the pace of my day and the way I walk through my day is healthier. It's more balanced. It's more in sync with my body and my mind. I definitely have more more of a well of patience and reserve, so that when I come home and I'm a mom and a parent and I have to cook and clean and do homework, I'm more grounded. I think I'm able to be more present. And at the same time, I receive the gift of what my children are. Sometimes I don't see that, but I'm able to kind of give. And at the same time, I think I've been able to receive more. I think in the past, I was kind of the giver, the producer, the doer. And now I've developed this like really neat receptivity, which is new for me. I think I'm able to be more receptive to someone wanting to give something to me, whether it be a compliment or an action or help. And so I've been able to kind of get, I would say, probably more present, more grounded, to be able to be kind of more of a circular flow. And with that, I think a big thing that's changed is I've been able to spend more time outside every day. And again, even if it's a walk, I think that being outside, connected to the wind, the light, nature, and this bird sounds, it's something that's always there, but it's not there unless you're aware of it. And I think that what's changed for me is I actually am aware of it now. And when I'm in it, I feel it. And I'm nurtured by it. So it's an active relationship. I don't feel like I go outside and it's like this just passive enjoyment. I feel like it's going through me and I'm like appreciating it. And so I think it's been significant. It's been a big change for me. All of the roots have always been there. They've always been there. But I feel like this shift, it's just allowed these things to manifest more fully. And I know that in 10 years or 20 years and my next, I think it's like these growth stages that we're in. And with each stage, things become fuller. Some things recede, some things become fuller. And so I think this has all been a trajectory throughout my whole life. So it's not all new. It's just that it's become more obvious and I've become more aware of certain things.
Neat. And what about health-wise, now that you're more able to be sort of like in sync with what your body needs, whether it's being outdoors, taking the break, having rest, do you feel healthier, have more energy, or?
Yeah, well, it actually took me about 5 years to figure out all my medical issues. And surprisingly, took me a long time to figure out my myriad health issues. And over those 5 years, it actually has taken a long time for my energy to return. I realized how low my energy was in 2015. So it didn't bounce back. I still feel like there's room for improvement with my energy. And it's been 7 years now. I feel that my health is thankfully good. And I have an understanding of all the things that were going on. And so I think that for the most part, it's been surprising on how long it's taken for me to rebound. But looking back, I think that due to stress due to something called adrenal fatigue, which is something that I used to work a lot with people, just how over many years of chronic stress, it affects your hormonal system and it affects your physiology to a degree that you can develop a lot of medical problems. So I'm sure I had adrenal fatigue. So that was probably a little bit surprising as how long it's taken me to recover. But at this point, I'm feeling good.
Awesome. This has been wonderful. I'm curious, there doesn't have to be because you covered so much in such like wonderful depth, but is there anything that's sort of bubbling up for you that you want to share that we haven't addressed?
Yeah, I think that I think if a colleague who was going through this type of transition, and to me, it doesn't even matter whether it's medicine or, tech or computer programming but if you're consistently questioning whether this is the right thing for you and it keeps coming up and you've made transitions, but it's just not been working. I always tell people, if you can make a change, even if it's a small one, if you can and the opportunity is there, do it. I think that the only thing that you could lose is by not doing it. And I think through every stage, every decision, there's always growth and there's always learning that's happening. And so I always urge people, if they have a consistent knock on the door that says, this isn't working for me, and that knock can come through insomnia, it can come through medical problems, it can come through fatigue, depression, it can come through, at the end of the day, crying. I had a lot of crying just due to exhaustion. And so there's just so many ways your body and mind speak up. And I just urge people to listen to that. And it'll continue to knock. That's the cool thing, is that I'm very, our bodies and our minds are so amazing, because if they need to give you a message, they'll continue to talk to you. So you'll get it eventually. But but I think that's one of the main messages I'd like to give.
I love it. Let's stop on that. That's a wonderful quote. So I'm going to pause here.